Donna, thank you. And it's a real pleasure to see so many familiar names and to welcome new names. Just for a quick introduction, I know some of you know me, but I thought it would be useful just to give you a quick overview of my experience and background. And that's primarily just to give you a flavour about where my views, thoughts, learning, experience comes from, so that you can see, hopefully, that it's an informed view and insight. So I've got over 20 years of coaching experience, both coaching at an exec level, working with teams of either senior managers or exec teams, and also training individuals within organizations, either as coaching as a leadership style or as internal coaches or HR directors who want to use coaching more strategically within their organization to accelerate change and really drive the value from their talent and people. I've worked across all three sectors and across some amazing clients who have been doing some great work, from shop floor to the C-suite. So I hope that I can adjust my style and approach to suit those individuals as we would do in coaching. At heart, though, I'm a pragmatist. I'm very much about what works at work. And I hope you see that come through in the webinar today. If you feel something won't work in your place, or you've tried that and it didn't work for you, then as Connor says, please share that experience and that learning, because it's critical that we find what works for you and your people, and that really drives the performance and accelerated change that we're going to need in this new world. And we'll talk more about that new world as we go through. I'm also very fortunate that I do what I love, and I love what I do, and that's coaching. And we have a coaching focus. We have a very simple purpose, and that is coaching for a better tomorrow. And that better tomorrow could be you as an individual, could be your team, could be the organization. And we even look beyond that and say, how does this impact society? How do we make it a better tomorrow for everyone? And as we go through, just think about that. How are you making not only yourself, those that you're responsible for, those that you oversee, the organization, society, how do you make it a better tomorrow by using coaching? So that's a little bit about me. As Connor says, please feel free to debate, to challenge, to chuck in any questions, and make it as interactive as possible. What I'd like to do also, for those that aren't aware of Coaching Focus, is just give you a quick flavour of what we do. We're a coaching-led consultancy, and we've got a global reach. So we work with national and international clients. And what we do, we bring together the best-in-class change consultants, coaches and trainers with a wide range of backgrounds, expertise, and proven tools. And that's an important part here. Tools that we know work because we've been there, done it. If you like, we've got the t-shirt to show that we've done that as well. And there's lots of case studies on our website that you'll be able to see. But when we do that, it's not just about us doing that to you. That's by far what we do. But what we do, we co-create pragmatic solutions that work for you. So yes, we have off-the-shelf solutions, but a lot of our work is tailored specifically to your needs to achieve coaching for a better tomorrow. And a quick overview of that: consultancy services, where we'll work with some of your strategic initiatives. For example, some areas down there, which I'm sure you can all relate to and have some of those challenges already. Obviously, we provide coaching on a one-to-one, executive or at a talent level. We also provide a service where we provide coaching managed support to make sure that both your external and internal coaching is working and is efficient, and you get the reports to show that that's working. And we also do senior team coaching and team effectiveness. And as you'd expect, we provide training services around leadership, team mentoring. We have ILM portfolio from level 3 to 7 and masterclasses. We're quite often asked to provide sort of specialist masterclasses around certain topics or areas that organizations want to change and shift. And of course, all of those are supported with one-to-one coaching or group coaching if required. We also, as you'd expect in this new world, have a digital service. So trying to take coaching in a practical way online so that we can support the process and the activity so that we can really get that data that will help us inform whether the coaching is working or not. And if it is, how do we then accelerate that change agenda? So those are the things we do. And hopefully that's a good overview about me, about the business. And the reason of giving you and sharing that knowledge is just give you an understanding of where this informed view is coming from as we move into the webinar. So let's get started. What I'd like to cover today are a number of points. What I'd like to do is just set some context and understand how we need to not only understand it, but embrace this new world. And my goodness, the last 2 years has been very interesting. I think you could say it's been the perfect storm, not just with the pandemic, but other things which we'll look at as we go through. And this got me to think, probably like yourselves, not only in the time that I was sort of at home reflecting, but just thinking about what does that mean for the ways that we need to work now? What is it that we have as individuals, as human beings, of expectations of the organization, of each other, of our colleagues? And what does that mean for us as HR professionals in the way that we adapt our strategies and the approaches? And more specifically, what does that mean for coaching? So one of the areas we'll look at is how we put coaching into context, into this new world. What does that mean for coaching? Do we really understand coaching and what it can do to help accelerate the change agenda and help to create an environment where people can play their best game? So one area we're going to look at is really thinking about how you position coaching as a strategic resource. Now that might sound very simple, but for me, a lot of the time that I speak to HR professionals, they always talk into coaching as a tactical resource. And as we go through, I want you to really challenge yourself, whether you're thinking about coaching strategically, and if so, how are you doing that? How are you leveraging that? How are you getting engagement from the top team and others around you? And part of doing that, we'll look at focusing on what you're coaching rather than who you're coaching. And again, it sounds a very simple point, but again, it's something that I hear when speaking with HR professionals that they just seem to miss and misunderstand. The other thing is, if we're going to create coaching as a way of being, we need to think about how we create sustainability. And I'm not talking about sustainability in the environment. I'm talking about sustainability of a way of doing things. If you like, people may call it a coaching culture. So how do we create a DNA, a systemic approach to coaching that stays around and becomes how we do things within the organization that really helps drive the change agenda? Key parts of that are around education and engagement. And I'm quite passionate about this. Wherever I see coaching initiatives fall over, it's because there was a lack of education and engagement. We just think because we're passionate about it, that others should be, and they will be excited, engage, and just align to the approach that we want them to take. That isn't always the case. And as I say, it's probably one of the key factors of why coaching programs fall over. The other thing is around how do we build not just coaching capability, but how do we build coachee readiness? How do we get individuals ready, willing, and able to be coached? And as you'll see, we're going to talk about dancing on this webinar. And how do we get individuals to not only have a great dance, but enjoy that dance and want to do more of it? So we'll be looking at that towards the end. And the final piece that we'll look at is how do we create the utopia for coaching? And some of you who have been following me on social will see that we're starting to think about how do we democratize coaching? How do we make coaching something that is just done throughout the organization and people want to do it? And we create, in coaching terms, a flow, not just on an individual level, but within the organization, an energy that is unstoppable, that's empowered to really drive your change agenda and create the outputs that you're looking for in a sustainable, democratized way. And the final piece is just ask you to reflect on what's your take on what is coaching for a better tomorrow, and where is coaching going? So those are the key points that I'd like to cover with you. And as I say, please make it as interactive as possible, and please challenge me where you see fit. And if you see something that's not working that I'm explaining within your organization or the other way around, then please share that so we can all learn from each other. So let's get started. So it goes without saying that we're living in a new world. You know, we're living through some of the most disruptive times in history for a number of reasons. The first thing, even without the pandemic, was that we are going through the fourth industrial revolution. And it probably didn't hit us as much as we thought because the pandemic over the last 2 years has been at the forefront of the way that we're operating. But things are changing. And I'm going to show you shortly a little video just to give you an understanding about how things have changed in the ways of working, even if you take out the pandemic. In addition to that, and I guess this is the perfect storm, a global pandemic that has profound impact in the way that we work, hybrid working, the great resignation, all of these things that have started people to rebalance their life and their ways of operating. And that's had a major impact on the employer. We've also, sadly, seeing that, whatever your view is and what the science points to, I think it's true that climate concerns are now a reality, and people are having to adjust the way that they work and adjusting the way that they approach things in the way they do generally in life. And finally, sadly, as you're all aware in the news, and it continues, is there's now war in Europe right on our back door. And hopefully, let's hope peace comes as soon for those people and we can find resolution in a good way. So setting that context and the reality of today is that the pace and impact of this change is phenomenal, and it shows no sign of slowing down. In fact, probably accelerating. And therefore, your leaders, the people that are trying to do great work for you, find themselves in a challenged place as never before. And we need to take that into consideration. So what I'd like to show you now, make sure your sound is turned up and you may want to adjust your screen, is a video that I found online which really brings alive the fourth revolution. And when you watch and listen to this, what I'd like you to do is just look through it from a coaching perspective, a coaching lens. Think about how can coaching align and address some of these needs, some of these challenges that we'll be facing. And how do we bring that human element into very much a digital world to make sure that we keep it humanized and that we make sure that we maximize the potential that your great people have and can offer in a way that really drives value and accelerates that change agenda.
Like any of the previous industrial revolutions, it's clear that the fourth industrial revolution is driven by technology.
Data, artificial intelligence, robotics, and a lot of new technological inventions which are changing our business and will also change society in the next coming years.
We have created a large amount of computing power, tons of data and connectivity. And those three elements, they trigger all kinds of innovations such as machine learning, AI, IoT, who again then start to influence emerging technologies like biotech, infotech and so on.
I do believe it will be fundamental. I hope that for us human beings, we will have a more seamless integration with technology.
But it's much more for me also hacking into reality. It's really changing the reality as we know it.
We are facing a huge talent crisis which has never occurred in history before. We're talking about a deficit of 85 million highly skilled people by 2030. Because it's on a global scale, the solutions from before will not be applicable in the future.
Everybody who still walks around that believes that what he's doing today is still going to be relevant and that he's still going to do it the way he does it right now, it's time to wake up.
HR, talent acquisition, talent management should be one of the first priorities in the next coming years, because it's not only enough to hire the right people, it will also become a very big challenge to keep them on board.
I think we will all need to look around for changing roles, changing content of the job continuously.
Working with data and knowing how to treat data and how to manipulate them, how to make overviews of that data, and I think that's going to be important.
However, it's us and the decisions we make in what we do with the technology that's going to define the outcome.
Tech savviness is a given. People will need to be able to work with these new technologies.
What I consider to be much more important and valuable are the soft skills you need in this uncharted world.
And so in that respect, the human touch is really important. And so we need to also invest in that, making sure that people understand what these new technologies are doing and how they're changing their lives. But on the other hand, also making sure that communication and an open mind, tolerance towards others is also key to the fourth industrial revolution.
Well, the impact on businesses will be huge. The agility for change will be very important because we are moving at an incredible speed.
And if you embrace change, you're not afraid of it. And then you can learn continuously and you can basically adapt to any situation that comes around.
Something that we need to have in our mind, in our mindset, namely exponential thinking. And that's going to be one hell of a stretch because we are used in thinking in linear terms and exponential is the new kid on the block.
not be too rigid about your thinking, but have an open mind in things and be flexible. If things change, then change again and change with it.
Agility for learning or nimble learning will become even more important than it is already today.
Adaptation, adaptability, being able to be retrained, to stay curious also with what is going on in the outside world will be key to success, and really build upon a continuous education during the whole lifetime of people.
I don't believe in doom and gloom. I don't believe that people will be replaced by machines and robots. I don't believe that.
A lot of things are coming together and it will change the way that we live. There's no need for fear. It is here. We need to adapt. We need to embrace it.
We have evolved to become a better place. In fact, the technology allows us to turn this entire planet into a Garden of Eden.
It's going to change life fundamentally.
And I think that the opportunities are huge for everyone.
Great. So hopefully you found that useful and also insightful. I'd love to get your thoughts and any reflections in the chat or Q&A. I'll just give you a few seconds to do that, just to see whether there's any thoughts that we need to pick up on before I give you my sort of perspective and what I think that means for coaching. So, Conor, if you can just share anything that comes into the chat, that would be great. Anything at all, Conor?
No questions right now.
Okay.
Nothing in the chat, but obviously maybe just give people a second just to type it up.
Yeah. Sure.
Remember, you can raise your hand or put it in the Q&A as well if you want it available for everyone.
Okay. So if there are questions as we go through, then just call them out, Conor, that'd be great. What I want to do is just give you, I guess, what is for me, what I've taken from that, and you know, all the other stuff that you read in the press and obviously you're seeing in the world around us. You know, we now live in a digitally and technologically led world. That's not going to change. In fact, that's going to accelerate. It would be fair to say that old work practices are now mostly irrelevant. You know, what we did last year or last 2 years is now becoming relevant. People want something and need something different. I was at a conference, which I'll share the findings for that, where we were talking about hybrid ways of working. What I found and walked away from there, some of the senior HR professionals, certainly in the UK, was that we all know the problem. We don't know the solution. Interestingly, also from that, coaching wasn't mentioned at all, which was very surprising. And I want to help you just think about how you can use coaching to solve some of these challenges and these leadership styles that are going to be required. As you heard in there, and I'm sure you're seeing it within your business, you know, the great resignation, talent attraction, engagement, and retention will be critical to sustainable success. Coaching plays a key part of that, and I'll explain how and why. People will demand empowerment and push back against authority. You know, especially Gen Z that are coming through. Gen Z don't like to be told what to do. They want that freedom. They want to have an ability to do great work in a way that how they want to operate. That's called empowerment. And organizations in the past have disempowered organizations, and we need to think about that. The power has shifted from the employee, from the employer to the employee. The employee now has the power, and organizations need to wake up and understand that. Soft skills, as you heard, will be invaluable. Those leadership styles and, you know, yes, dealing with technology, but also dealing with human beings and making sure we get the best out of them. That will mean us needing to have better ways of communicating, staying open-mindedness, and that exponential thinking, not just thinking linear, but that creativity, innovation, collaboration, all those things are core skills that will be needed by people within your organization to not just to thrive, but just to survive and to compete in your marketplaces. And as you saw in the video, you know, agile, flexible, adaptable ways of working, and those ways of operating will become the norm. You know, those are things that you will start to need to develop and have in place as something that just happens within our DNA. The interesting other thing that we need to think about, certainly again with Gen Z and the younger generation, there's a shift from organizational growth to personal growth and well-being. People put work-life balance at the forefront most of the time of the way that they do things. And we need to be conscious of that. And again, that's just a reflection of where the shift in the power is happening. So I would like your thoughts here and any questions that you have, because this will hopefully evoke some interesting conversation and debate. So now you've seen the sort of context and where we are today, and that's real. If you don't think it's real, then just look in the press and just talk to other colleagues. This is real, it's with us. So the key question that we're asking, and I hope you're asking as well, is what does this mean for coaching? How do we need to leverage coaching to make sure that we address some of these challenges and create the environments and the cultures that will enable us to thrive and to continue to deliver and do the great work that all of you are doing within your organizations? So please feel free to put any thoughts in there, just either words or questions. And again, Connor, if you could call those out, that would be great.
There's a comment here talking about coaching can be used to retain staff and to widen the mindset, move people forward and expand viewpoints, ideas, and thus overcome challenges. Things are fast moving and people need to be agile in their thoughts, ideas, approaches, and ways of working. And coaching can be used to achieve this.
Let me just talk into those bits, Connor. I couldn't agree more. There's two bits there, really. Helping to create those agile ways of thinking, giving people the confidence to know that they know the answer and that they can make those decisions without having to ask or be told by their managers. That's, for me, that's what empowerment is about. That will create agility. Where I'll share later my view on what that DNA needs to look and where we are now and where we need to go, and where coaching plays a key part in that. Also the retention, I think also the attraction. And strangely, as HR professionals, we've known this all the time. I think now it's just come into real focus, that it's really important to support individuals in a way that they want to be supported. I wouldn't say that individuals have become selfish, but they want to know what's in it for them. It's not just about, share value or what's good for the organization. Organizations need to appreciate that people want to understand, what's in it for me, the good old whiff-on factor. And coaching and supporting them and having a tailored, specific development plan for them, for their careers, and being supported in their careers at different transition points, and so that they can see that growth is critical. A lot of individuals now, certainly Gen Z, don't see the salary as a key factor, although they will ask for more, I'm sure, but they see the sort of the development and the support that they're getting from the organization. The other thing which we'll look at in a second is that organization ethical? Is it doing the right things? Is it something that I align to and those values align to me? Is it purposeful? And again, we're starting to see that shift and coaching having to align to that around purpose and values driven type of work. Any others, Connor?
Yeah, there's lots of comments coming in, and we've got one of the Q&A as well. So mostly I think it's in agreement with what you're saying, supporting the exponential thinking rather than linear from Ellie there. Chris outlining that you need coaching to keep supporting and motivating your people. Chris Bly also mentions that the increase is going up for the demand in terms of agility, flexibility, and adaptability. And coaching again is an ideal way to help people flex when they're doing that. Just going to pop over to the Q&A a second. There's an anonymous one here. If people want more work-life balance, do you see people being put off by a coaching approach in the future?
Well, that's an interesting question. Simple answer is no, I don't. I see coaching as a way of helping people to find that work-life balance. I see coaching as a way for people to really understand their purpose and what they want out of not just life, but what they want out of the organization and the job itself, and for them to feel supported. I'm not saying that organizations should go over to life coaching by any means, but I'm certainly saying that coaching can help with that resilience, that well-being, and getting that work-life balance right for them. And as we see, employee engagement is critical. And if people are engaged, they will bring their best selves to the workplace and deliver great work. And organizations, I think, this need to, with the empowerment side of things, just need to be comfortable with that, because gone are the days of command and control. My view is people will do a great job, and coaching can support them in doing a great job. And I was working with a client yesterday, and one of their core factors is being happy. That's one of the sort of measures that they measure. It's right at the heart and of their purpose. So if you've got happy people, happy is an interesting word, and we had a good discussion around what that means. But I look at it as someone who's has a role that is fulfilled, has a life that's fulfilled, and that they feel equipped and confident to deliver on that. So absolutely, coaching plays a key part within that.
There's lots of comments coming in, and there's some really good ones as well. So if people do feel comfortable, please do raise a hand, and I can allow you to kind of express your point to the group verbally. But there is another question in the Q&A as well, again from an anonymous person, but that's fine. Coaching is seen as an opportunity in our business to move forward, a short step in brackets. Some people see this as a stepping point and then move on. How can you change their mindset to get them to see that coaching can be a career?
Well, I take 2 points from that. It's again, another interesting question. One of the downsides of giving people that clarity and understanding about their purpose and what they want is they decide that they're in the wrong organization and they do move on. And that's quite common, certainly at a senior level. When I'm coaching, people say, this isn't for me, I want to go and do something else. I think organizations should embrace that. Although that will obviously cost a lot of money, it's creating an environment where people feel that they are supported and they've got that freedom. And I'm sad to say, but that's the shift from employer to employee. The power sits with them. And you could say that if they don't get that support, they move on anyway because they're unhappy, but they just don't know why they're unhappy. Moving into, if I've understood the question right, is moving them into a coaching career. I would hope that they have seen the benefit of coaching and want to do that within the organization and support others within the organization. And again, I certainly see leaders that have been through a coaching, they found it quite profound and they want to support other individuals, whether that's through a mentoring process or coaching, and give back to the organization. And most people that I've worked with want to give back either to their own organization or to society in some way. And for me, that's all part of coaching for a better tomorrow. So I hope that answers the question.
I'm going to take I might know who this is. I'm not going to name them, but I'm wondering whether the question revolves around them being a workplace performance coach. Just because we worked with one of your colleagues before, if you're the right person. Yeah, I'm hoping that as you develop that coaching capability, that they want to bring that coaching by either through their line management responsibilities or separately as an internal coach. And I think that we'll start to see more organizations having separate teams that is not just a job plus coach, it's you are a full-time coach working within an organization. And we started to see that at places like Ernst & Young, Deloitte, etc. But I think we're going to be seeing that even more across organizations. And coaching, I think, in the next 5 years will be the leadership style and the skill set that organizations will require. Perfect. Vinny's got his hand up as well now, so I'm just going to allow you to talk a sec, Vinny. And I think what it says is just if you can unmute yourself and feel free to join.
I think you can probably hear me. This is just really to just echo what Trayton was saying around coaching and being able to do it internally, almost like a job role. Certainly Surrey Police, where I did my training with coaching focus, had a department, and we were able to sort of distribute coaches across the force to embed them within the sort of workplace to allow the opportunity for individuals to get coached. They've subsequently extended that to supporting external companies like Surrey University and Sussex University by utilising coaches that have been qualified from the organisation. So it's really just opening it up as a career. I personally have extended that a little bit further, like Trent was saying, around giving back to society, and I've now begun coaching children and young people to help gain their resilience and their confidence. So it's certainly something that's growing from my perspective.
Yeah, and Vinny, can I just say, I follow you obviously on LinkedIn, you do some amazing work, and it's fantastic to see that you've really embraced coaching for a better tomorrow, not just within your own organisation, but other organisations, and especially for nurturing, developing the young people that are the future of tomorrow. So thank you. That's brilliant that you've really embraced the values and our purpose. So thank you for that, Vinny. Any other questions, Connor, before we move on?
Just reading through the chat, and I think most of them are kind of on a similar path. There's one point from Charlene here about the hierarchical approach having to change to allow colleagues to feel empowered. That's the comment. So I think it just stuck out a little bit as opposed to some of the other ones.
Yeah, it's a lovely comment, Charlene, and it's something I'm still, if I'm honest, grappling with. What I find interesting, and I'll talk more about this when we look at sort of mindset versus skill set, is that a lot of people want that empowerment. No one likes to be told what to do. But when they are empowered, they don't know what to do with that. So they look to be told what to do. And I think this is part of the shift that we need to make culturally and societally, that we need to have the confidence that we do know the answers ourselves, and that we are, as individuals, brilliant people that can work it out. We just need that support. We don't necessarily need command and control, although sometimes that is needed, but we tend to wear that as a default. And I think Sir John Whitmore sort of sums it up very nicely. He says, you know, societies come from a place where as a child, your parents or guardian used to tell you what to do. Then you go to school and your teacher tells you what to do. Then you go to work and your manager tells you what to do. So we live in a world where we're used to being told what to do. So we wait to be told what to do. Now put that against what we need to be creating, which is agility, you know, adaptability, pace, speed, which technology is providing us to do that. But we've got a DNA which isn't built around that. So we need to find a way of shifting, not just within our organization, but societally, so that we know, even the great work you're doing, Vinny, and others I know are doing around developing children and giving them the confidence to know that they know the answer and that there are different ways of doing it. And that we as adults, if I can say that, and it's certainly not talking into the parent-child approach, but as adults, treating them as adults and appreciating that they do have the answer. It's just having a better conversation to create a better tomorrow. And I think organizations are slowly waking up for that. And those that have realized that before, through the pandemic, didn't have an issue because they could adjust and adapt accordingly. Those that hadn't, and very much had a command and control, they had people waiting at home just to be told what to do. And then productivity, etc., and innovation, creativity slowed down. So, you know, just start reflecting on that. And it's societal change along with organizational change that we need to be considering.
I noticed there's some chat going on there. So if anyone obviously after the session wants to exchange details and use this as obviously for networking and things like that, then by all means, please do drop me an email and I'll check with other parties if they're happy to share. But I probably suggest we move on now as we've got a limited amount of time with you and lots more to cover.
Great. So thank you. Some really interesting thoughts, and I think we're all aligned. If we're not, then please chuck in that challenge, or happy to have that discussion afterwards, because I love to see different points of view. So the question here is, how do we make a new world coaching strategy work at work? How do we take coaching and with the reality that we're facing and really make it work so that we can drive that change that is needed, and so we can continue to thrive and compete in the markets that we operate in? The first thing that I'd ask you to think about, and this is a personal reflection that you may want to be making, and I would say 90% of the time when I speak to HR professionals, a lot of individuals position coaching as a tactical intervention, a training intervention. Coaching is much more than that. And you need to shift your mindset and the way that you look at coaching from one of being tactical to one of being a strategic resource. How do I use coaching to change the culture? How do I use coaching to change the way that we operate? How do I use coaching to support some of the strategic initiatives that we've got in place to accelerate that change agenda and make performance happen? And if you think about it, coaching is focused exactly on that. As Miles Downey would say, coaching is the art of facilitating the learning, development, performance. It goes on to say an individual. I would stretch that and say it's also can be utilized very well for teams, but also for organizational coaching. How do you use coaching strategically to drive organizational performance, to drive organizational change, to create a DNA and a system that can thrive in this new world. Because if you don't do that and you keep in that tactical mindset, you will not succeed. It will fail. You know, it's what in the training world, I guess, what we call it a sheep dip. You know, it may work for a couple of weeks or 6 weeks, and then it dies away because people go back to how it was and how they operate. So you've got to think about it strategically, or systemically is another nice word here. So you may want to reflect individually about, where is your mindset with coaching? Do you look at it as a skills, tactical provision, or do you think about it strategically? And we designed our ILM Level 7 program, certainly the last 2 days, to really think about, you know, what does coaching mean for us as an organization in a strategic way, rather than just the training skills on a one-to-one basis. To help you start thinking about that, one of the other key questions that I ask HR professionals is when they talk to me about what they want to do with their coaching. A lot of them talk to me about who they want to be coached, or they give me sort of a colleague audience on an area that they want to focus on. It tends to be who. The question that I would say, it's not who, but what's going to be coached. Because the other thing we're focusing on what is not only that helps it to be more strategic and obviously informs who, but it also helps to measure it. And unfortunately, we're in a world where we need to show a return on the investment. You know, I hope we're all in agreement that coaching works, but your board, your senior managers will want to see a return on the investment. So if you're clear about what you're coaching and what are those performance objectives that you're trying to attend to, then it becomes much easier to be able to measure it and show that return on investment. If you're just doing it on who, then that's great for those individuals, but it's really hard to show the difference at an organizational level that the coaching has made. So what I thought I'd do is—
in 1 second there, Trayton, there's a comment just relating to that, is start with the why. There's a point there.
Yeah, nice. And I very nearly put the why there. And you're right, why are we doing this? And when I put these slides together, I had why, what, not who. One, the title was a little bit confusing, but also I think as individuals, as HR professionals, I hope you understand why we're doing this. You know, what's the purpose behind it? To create a better environment, a better system, a better culture that people can thrive and deliver and play their best game. It's then where you focus that and what you focus on that then will drive the, if you like, the organizational agenda, that change agenda. So yeah, lovely add on there. And picking up, if you haven't already watched the video by Simon Sinek talking about why, what, he talks about how, but also who here as well. So let me just share with you, I guess, how we used to operate and also where we used to focus. And some of that's changed and some of that is changing, but I think there's still a core focus that as HR professionals, we need to use as the core measure strategically. So I'm sure you've all got some form of what we call balanced scorecard. You know, we look at the financials, we look at the inefficiencies or the efficiencies and effectiveness internally. We look at the customer. Charlene, as you know, we're starting to look at the relationships that we have with suppliers. And I think that's an interesting perspective to say, how do we create across our supply chain more creativity, innovation? So that not only helps our colleagues and the people that within the organization, but it helps us as an organization because we're collaborating and providing better service to the customer. But it's also probably good for the environment with sustainability, reduction of plastic and all those good things. So you could also add on here the supplier. The other piece around here, which coaching obviously talks into, is the learning and growth, the people piece. So those used to be the 4 core areas that I guess we'd be asked to measure coaching against. What shifted though? I don't think those have shifted as such, because those will be, I'm sure, for your boards, the top 4 things that they're looking for. But what we've also seen coming into it is the ESG agenda. You know, organizations having to focus on the environmental and the social and the government side of things. So the question I've been asking myself, how does coaching support these core elements? How does it support this agenda? And certainly for Gen Z, this is going to be critical. You know, they will look at this rather than your financial performance. So how do we utilize coaching to help drive some of these areas and start to change some of these behaviors? We did some interesting work with the Royal Mail around health and safety. You know, I'm sure you're aware in health and safety is sort of it's like a policing, a sort of making command and control. How do we create behaviors that people are thinking for themselves around what is best interest for themselves and others around them? You know, how do we start to shift mindsets using coaching to change the behaviors around recycling and all the other key elements? I was in a client office yesterday, sort of, and it had on the light switch, you know, please turn off so you save your bonus. Very interesting to see that it's driven at financial. You know, people won't do it because they want to get a bonus. They want to do it because it's better for the planet these days. And that's the mindset that we just need to be thinking in. And we'll talk more about the language as we go through this as well. The other thing that you may want to start thinking about, you know, how to use coaching strategically. And I think over the next 12 months where coaching will be focused, and I'm no doubt that we'll be getting projects which focus on here. This is taken from top 5 HR trends from Gartner, really interesting article. You'll get the slides with the link here. You know, the trend number 1 is hybrid work. You know, I'm sure if you've got a policy, and that in itself is an interesting conversation, are you an organization that says you must be in for 3 days? You know, you're controlling people, or are you an organization that says work where you do your best work because we trust you and we empower you? And what was interesting from the work, an event that I went to, I don't think people know the answer to that. There's pros and cons. There's no best practice. But what I find interesting is organizations aren't thinking about how they use coaching to support people transitioning back to the workplace. They're not talking about using coaching to support individuals in that new world. And that is a new world that people are finding really difficult. It's change. You know, you've had 2 years primarily for some people, not all, but at home, isolated. How do we use coaching or our coaches to support them to transition back into this new world? You heard on the video, and I'm sure you're seeing this now, we need new skills, new ways of doing it. So how do you use coaching for skills development? Not just leadership development, not just coaching development, but the new skills to give them that support. Yeah. Well-being is becoming critical, although I did see something this morning in CIPD that says well-being is dropping as a priority. But I think the levels of mental health and people's well-being is going to be critical. And we need to be very careful how we use coaching with this, but supporting well-being, you know, utilizing to make people more resilient, understand their work-life balance. These are all things that coaching can support with. Employees want to be understood and valued. They want to feel empowered. They want to feel like you trust them. So I think empowerment, the cultural elements, you know, that leadership style, some of the policies that you're creating for this new world will show whether you trust them or not, as the case may be. And of course, we've got the diversity, quality and inclusion elements. So coaching for inclusion. You know, I'm seeing some great works with coaching for Black females or coaching for Gen Z or mentoring for Gen Z, reverse mentoring to people understand different perspectives. And Ellie from Ambitious About Autism, I'm seeing some great work with now just tapping into it to see how we can help make sure that we understand neurodiversity and use those individuals that are sort of the outliers and not in the norm in the bell curve of how we use those different ways of thinking in different ways and how we coach and develop and support and leverage that great sort of ways of thinking and doing things differently that we can bring into the organization. That's what's going to be needed. And certainly over the next 12 months, this is where you should be thinking about how you focus coaching rather than just as a skill set. It's focusing on the strategic elements. I mentioned that I went to an event last week up in London by The Economist Impact, and here I thought I'd just share with yourselves the core themes that emerged from that workshop. I'm sure I'll give you just a chance to take that in. I'm sure you can see some of the things that are relevant in your organization. But you can see on the left, you know, culture is going to be critical. Appreciation, we're all in this together. You know, I'm not saying hierarchy is dead, but it can't be hierarchical. We need to work out together. How do we leverage this and collaborate together? People want to feel like they belong to a community, not necessarily an organization, that inclusivity. People need to lead with empathy, and that emotional intelligence is going to be critical. And we do need to work out what hybrid ways of working are, and how do we use coaching to support people in their hybrid ways, and the sort of the more softer elements that will emerge from that, you know, well-being, mental health, etc. How do we do that? I would say, though, that what stays right at the top of mind for if you want to make a success of coaching strategically and make sure that you are showing a return on the investment is employee engagement. For me, I've always seen this as the strategic measure that we use for any success. This shows the discretionary effort that people will be putting into your organization. You know, it's showing a level of how much of themselves they're bringing to the organization and how much of themselves they're putting into the game that you're asking them to play. And with the hybrid ways of working, that's really hard to work out. But this is some interesting data from Gallup, and I'll show you a quick video in a second on it. But if you don't know of Gallup, it's worth going to their website. They've got some brilliant stuff around employee engagement. And some of you may be aware of the questionnaire called Q12, where they identified 12 key factors that show correlate to high employee engagement. And the research is quite proven that if you've got high employee engagement, or you can shift employee engagement upwards, then here are some of the factors that you can get there. You know, absenteeism, I'm sure, is fairly high in organizations at the moment, not just because of COVID, but because of other reasons. Turnover, you know, safety, sales, profitability. All of these things are key to further success. And you know, the agenda to achieve these has now changed. But I would say what's at the heart of all of this is the discretionary effort and the level of engagement and desire and fulfillment that people get at your organization will drive these numbers. That's really at the heart, and that's a real skill to be able to leverage. So if I may, I'm just going to show you another short video from the chief scientist at Gallup, which just brings alive the importance of employee engagement. And again, look through this as through a coaching lens, because coaching absolutely is critical to driving employment or developing employee engagement.
When employees are engaged, when they have those engagement elements going right in their lives, they have higher autonomy, they have higher ownership for the organization, they put in more discretionary effort. We found even in past recessions, engagement was an even stronger predictor of performance, and so there's an element of resiliency. Employees who are engaged are more resilient. They fight through tough times with you. They keep your organization going at a high level, even during those tough times, and they thrive during the good times, even at a faster pace than your competition. So I would think of employee engagement as a competitive advantage, as something that says something about your employment brand and your culture. When you have an engaging culture, we all know what happens inside organizations leaves organizations very quickly now through social media and other forms. People look to their friends for advice on where to work, and they look to all kinds of outlets technologically. And so your employment brand, having an authentic employment brand, starts with having an engaging work environment where people have their performance going right. They feel like they're performing and developing and a part of an important, significant culture that's making a difference.
So Conor, I'll just hold it there just to see whether there's any thoughts on, you know, what, not who. Great question about the why, or anything around employment engagement or the ESG agenda. Just give a chance to talk into that if they wish to. No? Okay, well, let's move on. Sorry, Conor.
Sorry, I just said nope, no questions.
Okay, great. Let's just move on. Okay, the other thing which we need to really think about if we're going to make a coaching strategy work and be sustainable. And I'm a great believer in wanting to put something, invest in something, and then make it sustainable. It stays around. It isn't just a quick fix. And sadly, you know, the things we're talking about here aren't quick fixes. They're not silver bullets. It's stuff that will need a shift in mindset, not just in skill set. And why is that required? Well, a lot of the time that I work with HR professionals is they talk to me about the skills development part. And they ask me, it's not an unusual brief, we want to do coaching skills one day and that will make an impact. Sadly, it won't. One day coaching program is a way of just introducing. It's what I would say part of the education engagement. What you need to think about coaching is that you're asking people to work in a different way. You are asking them, going back to the sort of Sir John Whitmore quote, you're asking them to work a different way of operating and changing their just whole DNA in which they lead and which they operate within your organization. So don't just think about the skill set. Don't just think about giving them tools and online provision, because that will shift a little bit, but it won't shift the mindset. It won't create something that's sustainable. What you need to be thinking of is the mindset. And in doing that, what we need to appreciate is that the old way of leading was very much from a management perspective. Yeah, it wasn't from a coaching perspective. And interesting, when I ask people which hats do they wear when they're operating as a line manager, it's common for people to say that they wear their management hat 80% of the time. Now, think about that. What happens here when we're working to the left-hand side of this line, this represents the power line, is that we're getting individuals that are holding on to the power. They're authoritative. So they're disempowering individuals by working 80% of the time with their management hat on. Now, what we need to be doing is giving people an understanding about how to utilize the coaching hat. And ideally in Utopia, what we want people to do is constantly wear the coaching hat and only put the management hat on when they need to use their power or authority. And that is the only way, by shifting and giving people an understanding of the balance. You know, I call this the three-legged stool of sustainable performance. We do need both, but what we can't do within organizations, if we want to shift and make coaching a success and that leadership style sustainable, we can't continuously have the default 80% with managing. So we use Coaching Focus, use a very simple analogy for people just to think about. Leading is a game worth playing, and certainly that purpose, the why and the what. What's the game you want me to play? Why do you want me to play it? And do I buy into that? Because if people don't buy into it, they won't be engaged. People know the rules of the game. I think most people come to work, they want to do a great game, but they then get stuck in a way of getting stuck in policy, process, and that's not agile. Yes, you need those things there, and yes, people need to be clear on those, but don't lead and don't have that as the default setting. Help people play their best game, and that's what coaching does to achieve that. So just think about, you know, where your culture is, not just as an individual, but where does your culture sit? Where would you split that? Are people good at balancing those three hats? Do they come in with a management hat and then just put the coaching hat on when they need to? Or do they come in with that coaching hat and then use the authority specifically so that's, that they use the authority as and when that's needed? Just start thinking about that.
There is a question in the Q&A, but I'm not sure if you're going to come on to this in a second, but it's what does shift the mindset? Is it just more investment, more time on it, etc.?
Yeah, let's go back to here, if we may. What is shift? The question is, what does shift the mindset?
Yeah, what does shift the mindset?
Yeah, okay. So for me, I'll go back to John Whitmore, where the people within your organization, most of them have come from that place where they are used to waiting to be told what to do. I'm sure a lot of you have done work to try and shift that. But what people don't feel or seem to be confident to do is make decisions for themselves. It was, again, the client yesterday, it was fascinating to see that they know the decisions, but they wait for the coach or someone to say, I think that's a good idea, go and do it. So they're waiting for permission to do that. And what we need to create is an environment where we've got individuals that they know the answer and they're confident and they know that it fits within the rules and what is allowed, what isn't allowed, and they go and action that. And it's something that I noticed. I started my career in the military and I set up the coaching academy at a place called Lympstone, which is the Commando Training Centre down in Devon. And that's why we're down in Devon here. And what we identified was that Marines were being given orders, but when they needed to think for themselves, they were clear on what they needed to do. And that was, for me, that was an element of understanding the game they were being asked to play and the overall strategic objective, and the actions that they then could take within the rules of war, of what they could do to achieve that. And they were allowed to go and achieve that and move forward in the fog of war, in the speed and the agility. And I found that fascinating and wanted to bottle it and put it into a DNA. So we got someone from Plymouth University, a professor from there, and she came down and she mentioned this was 30 years ago, coaching. And 30 years ago, I worked with my colleagues at Lympstone to develop a coaching academy and really understand that shift in mindset and reinforce that as long as you know what we're trying to achieve, which is the leadership piece, and as long as you're aware of the management and the rules, then it's for you to go and play that best game, knowing that you've got the support. And for me as an individual, to help you build that confidence and remove that interference so that you can deliver on that. So shifting the mindset is getting rid of that desire to seek permission or waiting to be told what to do. Shifting that mindset is about building that confidence and giving people an understanding that, one, it's okay to make mistakes, but two, it's okay to go and try it and drive that forward. You know, so those are the things that shifting the mindset for me include. And that leads nicely, if I may, come on to this piece, which is around how do you educate and engage an organization and that shift? Because coaching, if you step back from it and look at it holistically, is a cultural change. We're asking people to operate differently. And I hate to say this because I know some people have had a torrid time over the lockdown and COVID, but COVID has done the world a favor in a way, that it started to make people realize that they're human beings, they're not human doings, and that they have something to offer, and that they can play a better game in a way that they want to play it. And although it's digitally and technology led, it's very much still human centered. And organizations need to understand how to leverage that human potential. And we all know that that's what coaching is all about. You know, coaching is about the art of facilitating the learning, development, performance. It's about unleashing that potential. It's about allowing someone to play their best game. It's about allowing somebody to raise their awareness and understand what they can do and the direction that they can take. It's around reducing that interference and get rid of self-doubt, you know, self-esteem and low self-confidence. It's about allowing that person to bring their best selves to the fore and to your workplace and to deliver on that and find enjoyment and fulfillment in the way they do that and to grow. And what we need to do is, when we educate and engage people, not only do we need to give them an understanding about, you know, what we're wanting to do organizationally, but the most important thing is, what's in it for me? I'm going to go through this coaching program, or I'm going to go through some coaching. What value am I going to get for that? How will that support me? Unfortunately, we've come from 10, 15, maybe 20 years of a place where coaching was seen as remedial. No, I don't need coaching, I'm doing fine. Well, for me, you don't need to be able to get better. You know, and I find it amazing that when I'm going with organizations, having to educate and engage individuals on the benefits of coaching. People at the moment, I don't think, see that. They're just trying to survive and get through things, but realizing that coaching can help them not just survive, but thrive as well, and be a better person and deliver a better game for themselves, for each other, and for the organization. So engagement. And the other thing which I'll come on to in a second is, don't just think about educating and engaging managers or those that are going to be the coaches. Because when you think about it, that's only half of the equation. When you're coaching somebody else, there's two parties. Yeah, there's the coach, then there's the coachee. And I would say, I haven't got data for this, but I would have a good guess that's very close to 95, if not 100% of the organizations that I work with do not have a budget or invest in the coachee. And they forget to educate and engage those people that are going to be coached. Which leads me nicely to the next part, which is, make sure, if you're going to introduce coaching and you want that mindset shift, that it's just not about the coach that knows how to coach, or the way that I like to express it is dance, because coaching is a dance. And for people to be able to know how to to dance, it's not just the coach knowing the dance steps and being ready, willing, and able to coach, but it's very much about the coachee. And think about this, and it talks nicely into the mindset shift. If you've got a manager who goes on a coaching program, is having to learn a new way of leading, is having to ask great questions rather than tell people great answers, yeah, that's a different way of operating. That's a different dance. And when they go back into the workplace and they start having that different dance, or even simply dancing and spending quality time, 5, 10, 15 minutes with somebody where they're present and they're listening and having a good conversation, the individual who that person is dancing with thinks that's really odd, that's weird, I'm uncomfortable. So what they do, they don't embrace the dance, they push back. And what the manager says is, you know what, this coaching stuff, yeah, it worked in the workshop, but it's not working now. People aren't embracing it. It's odd, it's weird. It's too much effort to start to shift. So what happens? They stop doing it and nothing changes. So the mindset is one of, let's call it command and control, where I continue to manage because I know that works. And that's easier for me. And it seems easier for the other party. So the shift in mindset is making sure that not only is the coach aware, ready and willing, but also that the coachee, and that we all know how to dance, not only know how to, but that we learn and enjoy from the dance as well. Because if you can do that, that's what's going to create that shift in mindset. And if we can create that shift in mindset, that's going to create an energy and a power so strong that it will just flow, using coaching terms, into producing good outcomes. And all those challenges that we spoke of at the beginning, those things will just happen. Now, I know that that's not an easy fix. That takes time. But if you think about coaching strategically and you think about shifting the mindset, not just about the skill set, and you think about coaching in a way of getting everybody ready, willing, and able to have a great dance, people will enjoy that, and then change will happen.
Question in the chat there a second before you move on. Claire's commented, what tips would you recommend to support with this? And Vinny just posted before then that he provides an FAQ sheet to Coachee before, but I guess Claire's probably talking from a less than a one-to-one basis, as a kind of organizational basis.
Yeah, so the things that we highly recommend is when you're thinking about introducing coaching, don't just think about developing the coach. The other party, the coachee. So we run either half-day or one-day sessions for the coachee to come and understand what coaching is, what to expect, what that conversation means for them. Explain to them that they're the individual, that we need to be doing the hard work, i.e. the thinking. They'll need to be coming up with the answer, that we're giving them a level of empowerment, but you need to appreciate that, the organization still has some rules and some boundaries, and that the coach, if it's your line manager, still needs to wear that level of authority. But when they're wearing that coaching hat, then it's for you to contribute. It's for you to come up with some ideas and have that freedom to play your best game. So it goes back to that education and engagement. It's about making sure that your audience isn't just your line managers, and then people feel like coaching's being done to them. It's like an internal comms program. This is what coaching is. And again, that comes down to a point around language. Is coaching the right term? HSBC don't have coaching. They do it at executive level, but they have mentoring. So what's the language and the approach that's going to be right for your organization? That's the reality. Think about also that, coming back to that what and the why and the what. What are we trying to achieve? What level of investment, time and effort, and obviously money, will that take to create that shift? And how do we then create a comms plan to make sure that we're educating and engaging the right audiences, not just the coach audience, but so that when this coaching is presented as a different way of operating, that people are ready for that and they embrace it and they enjoy it and they see what's in it for them. There is a blog which we've written on this, which, Connor, if we could add to the list that we send out, but it's making sure that everybody that you're asking to dance, wants to dance, is ready to dance, and is able to dance. And even if that's a basic level of just saying, this is what we understand as coaching, and this is what it's done for you, and this is, you know, the roles, responsibilities. And you could even say this is not mandatory. You can either embrace it or not, as the case may be. But what I can, from my experiences, when people do embrace it and people start to see movement and people start to see that level of learning and enjoyment and then performance and those sort of centers where coaching has worked, people want to get on board. But the trouble is, a lot of organizations try and do it all at once. And then we lose that focus, we lose that momentum. You know, think about maybe doing a pilot with a region, with a market, with just one organization or function, and just show the difference, employee engagement scores or whatever, working with a retailer where we're wanting to make them across their 30 stores, we're wanting to make them the #1 store across the UK. People will sit up then. Results gets noticed. And the difference here, you know, is using coaching, not just for managers, but across the organization, in this case, 200 individuals, to make sure that they dance, and that the dance is in step with where the organization, the game that they're being asked to play. That's how you get that shift. And if you do that, what you get is what I would call democratized coaching. And what I mean by that is that, you know, and I found this picture, and I love this picture. It's sort of looking at the bridge. It's saying we're moving from one world to the next. And the old ways of working aren't going to work. Command and control is not going to do that. Managers are struggling. Technology is giving them so much data and so much information that they can't control that themselves. They've got to be comfortable in not knowing. They've got to be comfortable in asking questions and getting the answers from their teams, from the individuals, and bringing all that diversity and understanding together. You know, let's call it, whether you call it coaching, facilitating, great leading, that's what they need to be doing. And it's not just a world where, you know, managers do coaching to others in that line management. That's an old style. That's the old way of doing things. What we need to create, and this is why I love this picture, is a flow, is a momentum where everybody aligns to it with great leadership, and then everybody knows how to have great conversations. Everybody knows how to dance, i.e. is coachable, and everybody embraces wanting to learn, develop, and perform, because there's something in it for them, and there's something in it for their teams, their colleagues, and there's something in it for the organization. And on a macro level, there's something in it for society. You know, and I can utilize those skills, not just within the workplace, but in my personal life as well, and take it to schools and just make coaching for a better tomorrow a reality. So that's what I see as a utopia, and that's certainly what the coaching focus we're trying to develop is democratizing coaching, not just with coaching skills, but making sure that everybody knows how to coach and everybody knows how to be coached, and that we improve the level of conversation so that we are coaching for a better tomorrow. So that's my views and thoughts. I'd love to take any questions or chats that are coming through. I'm going to stop sharing, if I may, and then you'll be able to see me and hopefully see you to be able to do that. Great. So any questions, thoughts in the chat?
There's one I had actually. I think it's just from what you were saying a second ago. Is well, actually there is one in chat first, so I'll come to that first. Do you think people generally know what empowerment means, what it is, and what it actually involves?
So
I'm not quite sure the rest of the question is. People want this, but I'm not too sure it's widely understood.
So I think if I might give a couple of answers or perspectives on that question, Connor, I think people do understand the word empowerment, and we can all look that up in the dictionary. And I think most people, if not all people, want a level of empowerment. No one likes to be controlled. No one likes to be done to. You know, we all like that freedom. And we're seeing that across Europe and everything. You know, when freedom's taken away from us, we push back, quite rightly, you know. But I think and this is the shift of the mindset. I think most of us in organizations have never had that empowerment. And now COVID has provided an opportunity for the power to shift from the employer to the employee. And people are realizing that actually I do have some power here, but I think they're still trying to work out what to do with it. And it's interesting. I was at the event I went to last week. There was a side stage for Gen Z, and there was a lot of Gen Z talking, and they were saying, we want empowerment, but actually we also want you to tell us what to do. So I think we're in a world of transition where people want that freedom, but they're not quite sure what that means to them and what to do with it. And I think organizations are in that similar position, that they want to let go of that control and power, but they don't quite know how to do that. I guess a good example is the hybrid policy. You know, we want people to give the freedom, and we say, you know, you can work wherever you want to work and work in the best place, it gets the best outcome. And then we put in policy in place that says you need to be in the office 2 or 3 times a week. So we're all still trying to work out what that new world means to us. And as I said, there were a lot of good brains in the at the event having this discussion, and very few had, or no one had the answer, the best practice. I'm sure that will emerge, and in 3-4 years' time, but you know, we will find that. But I think we're in a transition of empowerment versus command and control, and I think that's where coaching comes in. And for me, I think that is part of the answer, is giving people the skills to listen, to hold a conversation rather than have a conversation, and to help someone to process and work the answer out, and the reason that's the best answer for them, for the organization, and for customers and suppliers. Help them to find that out themselves. So I think we're on a journey of discovery in many ways, which is exciting, not just for coaching focus, but for us as organizations.
Perfect. And then we got a question from Sarah in the chat. I think it's a question. I'm fully on board with the idea of coaching for a better tomorrow. I wonder if you believe that making coaching more available will continue to be a result of steady, consistent effort, or are you anticipating a breakthrough event of some description?
Cool. Wow. I'm going to pick up on the word available, because you may have seen in the marketplace, you've got organizations like Better Up and Coachee and organizations like that. I think that's a real shame. I think that makes, and they use the word democratizing coaching, and they talk about it, democratizing coaching as a sort of a price point that organizations can access to have coaching for the many. But I think they missed the point here. What we want to be doing, and for me, democratizing coaching isn't just making coaching available, it's making coaching the DNA. It's making coaching the way that we do things around here. It's doing it so that at any point I want to access coaching in a conversation, that conversation is very much coaching orientated, that allows me to discover the answer for myself, whether I'm the coach or the coachee. That's what, and I don't know whether there's going to be a trigger. I think to some degree, COVID has created that, because it's made us stop and realize that things are changing and things can be different, and that we can work virtually and we can work with home without being monitored or controlled. So, you know, if there was an event, then I don't think there's going to be another COVID as such. But like any revolution, it doesn't just happen overnight. And going back to my first slide, you know, the fourth revolution is here. It's just that COVID arrived at the same time, and it's just accelerated it and made us really focus on it. So I think we're in it. And I think those organizations that can adopt more of a coaching style or an approach that's more agile and adaptive, or, you know, this is classic Darwinism, I think will be around. Those that don't won't be. So yeah, we're in the event. We're here. It's just not a day event. It's years. And you know, in 10-15 years, it'd be interesting to see what are those new ways of operating. And when Gen Z are sort of further in their 30s to 40s, what is the new ways of operating with technology and incorporating that from, you know, human being perspective. So I think we're in for fascinating times.
Then when you said we're not going to get another COVID, just to try and unjinx it as much as possible.
Yeah, sorry. You know what I mean.
Yeah, so there's a question from Chris here in the Q&A. So I'm going to answer this one first, as it's got a like. So how do you get the business to see coaching as a strategic tool and not a firefighting tool? I have a vision to grow and expand the team, but 9% of my work is focused on underperformers.
Okay, yeah, great question. you've got to, sadly, Chris, you've got to show to your board, senior managers, that coaching works. Because if you think about it, they get out of bed, the first thing they're thinking about is their numbers. They're thinking about their KPIs. They're thinking about, in some form, that balanced scorecard. That's what they get measured on. That's what they get, critiqued on. That's what they get an email or a phone call to get an update on. So you've got to find a way of showing that coaching works. So this isn't a quick fix. It will be probably working with a team, a function, an area, and using coaching to really drive that performance agenda. And then show them the numbers, show them the investment of time and obviously money, but show them that return on the investment. If you continue to work in poor performers, that is a sort of, it is a coaching need, but you need to be very careful that you don't position coaching as something that's only for poor performers. It's quite the opposite. You need to show that coaching is there for those people that want to high perform, that want to play a better game, and driving that. But I would just be very clear and just scope that out like you would do any business plan. Where do I focus this? What's possible? How do I show that that's working? Sometimes I'd speak to my clients and say, what's the one thing that's keeping your chief exec up at night? And find a way of addressing that with coaching. Because that's how you're going to get coaching onto the strategic agenda. What does help, and I hear this a lot, is making sure that you've got an ambassador or a spokesperson at a senior level. And again, the best way to get that is to give them something with a good executive coach, so they see the power of that and say, look, you know what, I want to do this across the organization. I will sponsor that. So that's another way of doing it. But sadly, we've got to prove that coaching works and show the return on the investment. And sadly, we're living in a world where a lot of senior managers are in the old world. They are Gen X. They've come from that command and control. They don't see that new world. And sadly, I have to say this, but a lot of them need to wake up. It's the boiling frog syndrome. Things are changing. There's a danger that they just boil, sadly.
But that's the bit from my experience I find quite amazing, is that all these senior managers, execs, C-suite level all have coaches, but won't invest on it as a strategic resource. Yeah. They all want it themselves, but not for everyone else, and see that it doesn't work for everyone. It only works for me kind of approach, which I find quite funny, really.
And linking in with, HR directors that will show the numbers, the people numbers, those numbers with retention, and if good talent's walking out the door, a good chief exec will say, we need to change something. The numbers where people are off sick, that your employee engagement numbers, these are numbers that are telling you something about your key resource people. Machines will take over most things, but we're still, as the individual said on the video, we're still going to need people. And it's how we lead, how we coach, how we support those individuals that's going to make the difference between competing, surviving, or thriving.
Perfect. There's a couple more questions in here. So I'm conscious that of people's diaries and stuff, probably planning to leave at 11:30. So if we had to focus on one thing to start our coaching strategy, what would it be? Or can it not just be one thing?
I would say it needs to be one thing. Focus. Focus on what it is you're trying to shift, you're trying to change. Remember that coaching is about being better tomorrow. So what is it that needs to be better tomorrow? But also that one thing needs to be, I would say, on the organization's agenda. It just can't be on your agenda. You need to get momentum. You need to get people who say, yeah, I need that. That's a point of need. That if you did that, that would help me achieve. One thing I've learned in the consultancy world is that my job isn't to make me successful. My job is to make my clients successful. So whoever your internal client is, internal customer that's wanting support to help them to deliver on a strategic objective or whatever objective that might be, that's the one thing. And build momentum and plan that out. And then think about, not just what, focus on the what, but also think about the education engagement, but build momentum and curiosity, but excitement around this. Make sure that people know what they've got to do and how it's going to add value to them. And whoever is going to participate in that, make sure that, not just the coachee dance, but they know how to dance to help themselves and to help you to be to make them successful. And that's what I would say. So it is focusing on one thing.
And I'm going to just come back to your question in a second, Vinny, just because I think Christopher's relates to this one. What is the best ways of selling the benefits of coaching? Performance metrics, word of mouth, experiential, etc.
Numbers. Show them that it works. That's what will get attention. Numbers. Yeah. Whatever numbers those are relevant to you. To show people, those numbers need to stand out somehow. People need to see that something's working. Everybody's got a mindset that we're all busy and therefore they just want to do stuff that works. The other thing I've realized in the world of consulting is that everybody wants the easy option. So you've got to make it easier and simpler for them. Now, we know it's not easy and simple, but if it seems difficult, complicated, and it's not going to give a fairly quick return, then people aren't interested, that their agenda gets hijacked with other stuff. So we've got to think through that with the education engagement and I guess selling the business plan and showing that, there might be investment of time and money, but it's going to be fairly simple and there's going to be a return, certainly in the medium term for that.
And just to make sure that the full question is answered, would it be numbers for senior level only, or would it work throughout if you're looking up and down, if you're looking at the wider selling the benefits to people?
Yeah, I think the benefits of people is that, they will be more fulfilled. We have a simple model within Coaching Focus called LEAP, where people are learning more, they're enjoying their role more, they're achieving more, and the role is more purposeful. And just a simple measure around those 4 things will give people an understanding and a feeling that, they're enjoying what they're doing and there's more purpose and they're achieving and they're learning. That those are 4 simple human desires and requirements, and if people aren't getting that from a role, then they'll look elsewhere to get that. So I think it's less the numbers when we look down at sort of people, let's say the shop floor level rather than the C-suite, but the C-suite is definitely numbers.
Perfect. And then a question from Vinny: do we need to adapt coaching to serve the various generations, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, etc.? If so, how?
Cool, blimey, we've only got 4 minutes. So Vinny, I'm really happy to grab some time afterwards. Yes, the simple answer is yes, we do. Different generations have different mindsets, different desires, different wants. So, adjusting the coaching style and the coaching approach for those and expectations, and matching them with people who are of a similar age or whatever the answer might be. But I think it's yes is the simple answer. Yeah.
And I think people are starting to drip off now, obviously bearing in mind they probably have an 11:30, but
yeah.
Just to confirm, we will send out all the slides afterwards. If anyone wants to take one of these conversations offline and have a one-to-one chat, then by all means, myself or Trayton obviously mainly is more than happy to do that, as a lot of interesting conversations coming up today. Any final words from yourself, Trayton?
No, just to say thank you for everybody. I know you've got busy diaries. Thank you for joining us. Please think about coaching in a strategic way. It will make a real difference to the individuals within your organisation, and obviously, as we said, to society. And look forward to chatting further about coaching for a better tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.